my next training is October 19th, Thursday, the 19th of October until Monday, the 23rd of October. Okay. And again, it's a 5-day training, and I ship a 15-pound box to each student that has my 8-pound manual and a lot of handouts. They're getting a lot. That manual, I just can't, they call it the Bible. My students call their manual the Bible.
It sounds great. So where, if we wanted to sign up, anybody who was listening wants to sign up, where would we find it?
Well, you can go to my website, which is www.corporateflightattendanttraining.com. And if you fill out the form for information, I'll get that, and then I will call you, and then we'll talk about it.
Hello, and welcome to the Business Aviation Collective podcast, which is sponsored by LD Aviation. Today, we get a chance to talk to Susan Friedenberg. Susan Friedenberg has been in the industry for many years, and she is president of Corporate Flight Attendant Training and Consulting, which she started over 24 years ago. Susan, I'm glad that you're joining us today because with all of your background, I think you have a lot to share with us. And so I guess we'll just dive right in.
Okay.
How did you even get into aviation? Like, how did you start?
Well, it was because I'm not going to say what year, but many, many, many years ago, my grandparents used to go to Havana, Cuba for winters. That's where a lot of people went for their winters. And my father, I was about 5 years old, and my dad took me to the Philadelphia International Airport with my grandparents to launch them off. I was just so amazed by the energy in the airport, the flight attendants in their beautiful uniforms and the sound of the turboprops back then. In all honesty, there were not jets. And I mean, I'm not 95 or anything, but it was a while ago. And, I just couldn't get over the energy in the airport. There were so many people going so many places for so many different reasons. And I just could feel the emotion in the airport. And I said, Daddy, I want to be a stewardess when I grow up. And he said, honey, you can be anything you want. And
nice.
17 magazine had an article in it about a school in Minnesota that you could become a stewardess if you went to their school. And I filled out and sent it through the mail. There were no computers then. And one night we were having dinner and there's a knock on our door, and it's this man. And my father was like, well, who are you? And he said, well, I'm not going to say the name of the school, but for stewardesses. And Susan Friedenberg wants to be a stewardess. And my father said, I know that. But if my daughter wants to join an airline, she will apply directly to the airline. I don't know who you are and how you should home. And Daddy shut the door on him, and I was hysterical. You've ruined my life, Daddy. My life is over. He said, Susan, you'll apply to the airlines after you've gone to college a few years. I said, okay. And in his wisdom, he was right. The airlines hire you directly and they train you for free. You don't need to go to these schools. And I get phone calls from so many people that think that I'm an airline training school. And I spend at least 15 minutes coaching them on how to apply to the airlines the right way and not wasting $6,000 or $7,000 to go to some bogus school when an airline will hire you and train you for free.
Good point. All right. Very good point. So you learned early on all about that.
Yes. Thanks to my father.
Sounds awesome. Well, so he got you into it, got you in the right path. And did you end up starting in the commercial airline side?
Yes. I started flying for American Airlines when I was 20. And I flew for them for 7 years. I was based in LaGuardia, JFK, and then I transferred to San Francisco, and I was there 7 years. And at the time, American was only flying to Puerto Rico, Fiji, and Hawaii. They weren't a major international airline. And I used to have crews on my airplane all the time from Capital Air and World Airways, and they had stickers all over their suitcases from all over the world. And I thought, that's why I'm in this, So I quit American and 7 years and got hired by Capital Air, a very funky international charter operator. And I flew for them for 8 years, and then they went bankrupt in 1983, 84. And I would see these amazing little jets on the runways. And I thought, I'm not sure what that is, but I think I belong on those little airplanes. And I was living in San Diego at the time. And I just started researching the NBAA, the National Business Aviation Association, had a book at the time. They didn't have online like they do now.
Sure.
But I managed to get my hands on the book, and I sat there with my typewriter and did resumes and sent them out to everybody I could in the states that I was willing to move to. And
Nice.
and I met this pilot that was the chief pilot of General Dynamics, which is now actually, I guess, Gulfstream.
Yeah, Bombardier. Yep.
And he said, I'm going to have my chief flight attendant mentor you. And Joy mentored me. She was an amazing person, and she mentored me. And I got my first trip on a Falcon 50, a very small plane with 8 people from Van Nuys to Washington, D.C. And I pulled it off. They wanted a 4-course hot meal service on this little tiny airplane.
You're on a Falcon 50.
50.
Wow.
Yeah. And I pulled it off. And in life, there's things that you're really good at and things you're not good at. In all honesty, I was like a rock star out of the gate. No gates with us, but I was like a rock star. I just got it. I'm very organized. I'm a foodie. I figured it all out. And I thought, this is it. I have arrived. And then I started flying contract. I flew contract for a year in California. And then Coca-Cola was hiring. And I managed to get hired by Coca-Cola in Atlanta as a full-time, full-time contract flight attendant. I was not a full-time employee. I was a full-time contract. They moved me from San Diego to Atlanta, and I flew out of Charlie Brown Airport. And I had health benefits, but no Coke benefits. And I flew for them about a year and a half. And then I thought, I've been flying for so many years, and I thought I would try something else. And in all honesty, my ex-husband had an optical company, and we would import high fashion eyewear from Europe, design and sell eyewear. And I thought, I'm going to rep eyewear for a while. So I started repping eyewear for 4 years for Anne Klein in Atlanta. I had the whole state for my territory. But once a flight attendant, always a flight attendant. And
that happens to a lot of us in this industry. Business aviation grabs people and just doesn't let go.
I know. I mean, and so many people just move around within the industry. They might start flying, then they might become an S&D, scheduler dispatcher, or maybe I have 3 or 4 girls I've trained that are selling airplanes now. I mean, it's like amazing where there are charter brokers or people just move around. But I would take the lighter from my car and hold it in my hand like it was a PA and make announcements in my car to myself. Going past the airport. And I thought, I need to be back up there, back in the air. And so Eli Lilly wanted to hire me, and so did DuPont. I took the job with DuPont to be closer to my mom and dad in Atlantic City. We're in Atlantic City. And I decided to move to Philadelphia and fly out of Wilmington, Delaware. And I was with DuPont for 4.5 years. And then they downsized the flight department and sold 2 airplanes. And I was the junior person. I got cut first, which is a good thing, because when you think you're going to get cut, you're a nervous wreck all the time.
Sure. Right.
So I got cut, and I went back to flying contract, and I was really flying a lot because I had learned a lot about marketing through marketing eyewear all over Georgia. So I just took, instead of marketing high fashion eyewear, I was marketing Susan.
That is so cool. Okay, Susan, I want to jump in here for a moment. I have a question. You just talked about contract full-time versus contract versus full-time. Those are pretty industry standard words, but maybe for those people who are coming into the industry, can you talk to us what each one of them means? Like, what does contract full-time, maybe retainer-based mean versus just contract?
Okay. So if you are a full-time flight attendant for a major corporation or for a family, you are paid by them a full salary, 401, health, benefits. They pay for your recurrent training, vacation time. I mean, you are an employee of Pfizer, Coca-Cola, IBM, DuPont. You are a full-time employee with full benefits. And you don't get to say no if they call you for a trip because you are an employee.
Yep.
If you are a contract flight attendant, it means that a corporation or a charter broker or a family has a trip and their full-time flight attendant came in at 2 a.m. and can't go back out at 9 a.m. So your job, if you're flying contract, is to get on as many people's lists as you can. And then they'll go down the list and they'll call and they'll say, Lindsay, are you available to do a 5-day trip tomorrow night or whatever? And you'll go, yes. And then you're paid a daily rate. It's anywhere between, in these days in this country, between $500 and $800 a day, depending if it's international or not, plus all your expenses, your food, your hotel. But when you're full-time, you have a company credit card and you are paid a full-time salary. And then there's also, when I flew for American Standard for 4 years, I flew for them for 4 years full-time. We had a Falcon 2000 mid-range airplane, 2,300 nautical mile range aircraft. And if we were doing a trip to Asia, we would have to have an augmented crew change, which means there's 2 flight attendants and we had 4 pilots. So we only had 3 pilots, but we'd have to get a contract pilot to cover the trip. So I would do as the full-time, the back end of the trip, because I'm salaried. I would be in China for a week or 2, whatever, or Japan. And the contract flight attendant does the first leg from Teterboro to Anchorage, Alaska with the passengers, and then we crew change. And if it's a long trip, they will airline her home. They're not going to pay her $600 a day to sit for 2 weeks.
Sure.
And then I'll say to her to keep the continuity, are you available 2 weeks from tomorrow to be airlined back to Alaska to do the back end of the trip? And she'll say, or he. There's male flight attendants too.
Sure. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. I wanted to just clarify that. So using some of those industry words, buzzwords that outside people might not know. Okay, so back to DuPont. DuPont sold some airplanes and downsized. That's where we're at. Where did you go from there?
I was flying contract again.
That's right, contract. Okay. Yep.
Flying contract again. And then in 1999, well, what happened was because I was on the National Business Aviation Association Flight Attendant Committee, when we would have conferences, I would teach a session on marketing, how to break into the industry, which is a very large portion of my training, which I'll be telling you what my syllabus is in a little bit. But yeah, so I was teaching marketing at our conferences, and my mentor at the time was Dr. Bo Altman, who created FACS training. And Bo said to me, Susan, he said, you stand in front of people, you have an intense presence, you're funny, you're smart, you need to create a training. Where do you see yourself in 10 years? I said, flying. He goes, no, not flying. He goes, you need to create a training because people come out of emergency training, but now what? They have no idea how to market themselves. They do not know how to work a trip. They do not know about catering. You need to create a training and teach.
Okay, so a very big delineation between emergency training and like the day-to-day actual flight attendant training.
Right. My training is not egress training, but I have been a loud voice in this industry on why there is not a federal air regulation mandating for 19 people or less that there is an absolute trained person in the back of that airplane to evacuate it. I do not understand why there's not an FAR for that. 19 or less seats, there's no requirement, Lindsay, for a crew member. 20 seats or more, you have to have one and they have to be trained.
And that kind of brings into what I've seen a little bit of, there's a cabin safety attendant. There's different terms. One is trained and has a lot of FACS training, emergency training, and then the other one is not. Is that correct? There's 2 different terms?
Well, yeah. I mean, I would like to say just corporate flight attendant, and that encompasses that you are absolutely trained. And let me just say one other thing too. If you're listening to this, I want you to know there's no such thing as being certified. you are not certified. Only commercial flight attendants are certified by the FAA because they are required. Okay. So the only thing that you are certified for, when I see people's resumes online and they go that I'm a certified corporate flight, you're not certified. The only thing that you're certified for is the Gulfstream 550, because 9 or less people, 10 or more people, you have to have a trained, egress trained person. It could be the third crew member, or it could be the CEO's wife who's gone through FACS or flight safety, or it could be a pilot that's a non-flying pilot. He cannot be on duty as a pilot. It could be a flight tech who's been through FACS or flight safety. So there is no FAR for us. So, and the other certification is just CPR and defibrillator. So you are CPR and defibrillator certified, AED, automatic external defibrillator, and CPR certified, and you are Gulfstream 550 certified. That's it.
Okay. Not flight attendant certified.
No, no. And so what's happening is that in the cockpit on the crew sheet, it'll say PIC for the pilot in command, SIC for second in command, and then it'll say for the third person, if you are a trained flight attendant, your name will be there under flight attendant. Otherwise, they will list you as a cabin server or list you as a passenger.
Got it. Okay. I knew there was a difference in delineation there. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Okay. So you were talking to the gentleman who created FACS, and you started off into doing some training, it sounds like.
Yeah. I went to my favorite place on earth, Big Sur. And I sat in a cabin. I rented a cabin for a week. I shipped 2 boxes of supplies out. And I sat there for 2 weeks and created my very first training manual syllabus, which was my training in the beginning was a 1-day training. And my manual was 42 pages. And then it went to 2 days, then 3 days, then 4 days. And at 4 days, and now it's 5 days on Zoom because of COVID. My manual is almost 500 pages. It weighs 8 pounds.
Wow, that is awesome. So this is really the work that you've done over the last 24 years has turned into the product that you have. Let's dive in then. Let's talk about what the training has. What does it include? How does it work? You just talked about it being on Zoom.
It's on Zoom, and I love doing it on Zoom because I get to meet the person's family, and it's okay. My training is very, very, very intense, but I am a very funny, I'm comedically funny, and I teach with humor. In fact, before COVID, not many people know this, I was doing stand-up comedy in Philly.
No way.
Yeah, in Philadelphia and in Atlantic City, I was doing open mics. I'm very funny, but I'm passionate about my training, and I will tell stories of things that have happened to me that back up things in the manual. And I have no ego. I will tell things where I've messed up because I want my students to learn from it. You know, I use the B word, banished. You don't want to get banished. And I will tell, I've been banished from 2 or 3 accounts. I have no ego about it. Everybody I know has been banished. Something will go wrong, or, I heard a story about a girl on a Sunday out of Midway that she had the Saturday New York Times on, and they unshocked the airplane. The plane pushed off from the FBO, fixed base operator, and this man went crazy and turned around and went back to the FBO and threw her off the plane.
Wow, that's crazy. Well, it's a very person to person. It's a very direct relationship that you have with your passengers.
Well, this was a charter flight. She didn't know him. But the bottom line was it was Sunday. He's paying $6,000-7,000 an hour to charter. He wants Sunday times. He deserves the Sunday times. Sure, that's detail. You can't do this work without dotting every I, crossing every T, and being detail oriented. So in my training, some of the things that I teach is defining the corporate aviation flight attendant. Who are you exactly? And what do you mean to a flight department, whether you're full-time or contract? And then the distinctions between full-time and contract, the differences in the FARs and how they're applicable.
Okay, great.
Okay. 91, 135, subpar K for the fractionals. How do you market yourself in this industry? Well, managing yourself as a business person. I tell them you're not just a flight attendant. You are a businesswoman. You're a businessman. And when you're flying contract, you have to keep absolute complete records on every single tail number, every single galley. What does the galley have? Galley size constraints, the size of the oven, the microwave, the dimensions. What is on that airplane? You've got to have every single detail about that flight department in your book. Every single passenger's, preferences, and the pilots, everything. A well-fed, hydrated, and hot toweled pilot will always call you back for trips.
Yeah.
And you can be the best flight attendant in the world. If the pilots don't like you, you're not going to be back on that airplane. Sure. And passengers are not going to say, well, what happened to Lindsay?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Pilots say anything. She fell and broke her leg. She got pregnant. Her husband got transferred. They're not going to, unless you're full time, they're not going to care when you're contract. So how do you manage yourself as a business person in this industry? Information on interviewing, how to interview for a trip, for a job. How do you interview? And salary negotiations.
Oh, that's contract
for contract and full time. How do you create a perfect resume? And your cover letter is really the most important part of your resume, because your cover letter is what sells you to the corporation. And I tell my students, research the CEO, know who he or she is. When I got hired by American Standard, I was so thrilled to fly for a man who out of college went to South America and worked for the Peace Corps. And when in my interview, I said, I was so amazed that Mr. Poses went to South America and helped people. I would be honored to fly for somebody like that. You need to, or use their slogan, being the best I can,
Sure. Do your homework.
So you could put in your cover letter, I am always being the best that I can. Use their slogan back to them. So your resume, your cover letter, telephone and email etiquette for business interactions. There's nothing worse than calling somebody on your cell phone and it's going in and out. Make sure you're in a good location. And if you leave your name and numbers, leave your number twice and slowly. How many times, Lindsay, if people called you and said, my number is 625, blah, 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 and you got to listen 10 times.
I hate that. Yes, that's a really good advice. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So say your number slowly, 215-625-4811. And then at the end of the message, the same thing. Developing a professional image and dressing for success. You've got to wear a beautiful suit, pantsuit or skirt suit. You can't have anything really short, because if you're climbing into that jump seat up front, the passengers can see the back of you. And if you're trying to get in that jump seat, you don't want them to see your tush.
Right? You don't need to be mooning anybody back there. Yeah,
exactly. So dress for success, okay? And you shouldn't wear anything sleeveless, because if there's an emergency, your arms will catch on fire. No sling-back shoes, no open-toe shoes, because they'll go flying off. And what is the corporate culture of that company? Study the company. Know what their corporate culture is.
Yep.
Food safety awareness. It's crucial to protect your passengers, getting the best caterers in this country that you can, and getting your catering brought to you safely in the summer on ice packs. I'm like the ice pack queen. Caterers around the country say, we always know when we have one of Susan's students that they're like their ice packs. The language of business aviation catering communication skills, food, dietary restrictions, allergy restrictions, eating trends, religious trends, if they're kosher or if they're Muslim, making sure that you're honoring halal for your passengers. Just knowing about food presentation, making it look fabulous. People eat with their eyes. And the packaging, you've got to know your galley size constraints of the oven. The oven has 6 racks. It's 12 inches long, 3 inches in width and the depth, whatever. And then
that's a really good point too, Susan. I'll relate just a small funny story. So I did a little bit of flight attendant on a G4 many years ago, but I have had no training basically. left out of Hawaii with 12 passengers, and I didn't understand the packaging. What does packaging mean? Bulk or individually plated? And I was like, well, it's going to be easier. Let's do individually plating. I individually plated everything for all those people. There was not enough room to put in, and this seems like I should have known that. But anyway, I had food in the bathroom. I had food in all of the coat closets. Yeah. So anyway, note to them. Anybody who's doing flight attendant, the packaging is a big deal. I definitely made that mistake.
Absolutely. But, don't beat yourself up because you don't know what you don't know. You didn't have any training at the time, but you've got to know the galley size constraints. And a lot of the newer planes have chillers, which is a good thing. But, you still have to have everything ice packed on delivery because until the APU is turned on, the chiller is not cold.
Yep.
And then the trip prep from assignment to the trip's completion. I teach them how to work a trip from the minute you show up until the trip blocks back in. Everything. I mean, working a trip, every single detail of the trip, the sequence of in-flight service, duties, and aircraft responsibilities. What is your remain overnight responsibilities for the airplane? You have to clean and quaff that airplane, cleaning, grooming, and restocking it. If you're leaving and you have 6 men and women on, and you know that they love red wine, if they like a cab and they like a Pinot Noir and they like a Pinot Grigio, you better bring extra wine with you, making sure that you overstock certain things that you know that they love so that if you run out, you've got it. Aviation department communication skills, knowing how to communicate with the dispatchers, the schedulers, and I teach in my training, I teach the role of the scheduler and the dispatcher, that they are the glue. They are the glue between the CEO and his assistant, and the flight department.
I love that. Yes. Oh, go Susan, because that, of course, hits very, very home for me. I mean, that's exactly what we do.
Well, when you're a scheduler and a dispatcher and you call me for the 8th time to fly on the same airplane and I'm asking you the same questions, you might have a sick pilot in Africa. You might have, an airplane that broke in Milwaukee and you're freaking out. And the last thing you need is a flight attendant asking you the same questions over and over again. Plus, it's not your job to know the galley size constraints and everything. Everything needs to be in your book for each and every tail number so that I'm not bugging you. Because if you're the one that gets to make the final decision on who to call for a trip and I'm a pain in the butt to you,
yeah,
you're going to think, why did I've called her 5 times. Why is she asking me the same questions? And you don't know the galley size constraints. So I say to my students, so who do you think you could ask? If you're contracted and there is no full-time flight attendant, who would you ask? Oh, I'll call the pilot. Okay, pretend I'm the pilot. Call me. I'm the pilot. Hi, Mr. Johnson, I'm flying with you tomorrow. I need to know, can you tell me about the galley? Does it have an oven and a microwave? He'll say, I don't know. It's not my office.
Right.
I know. I mean, my office is the cockpit. So who would you call? And some of them get it right away. Call the mechanic. The mechanic, everything. He'll tell you everything. And the detail, make sure that if you say the microwave, don't tell me the microwave from the top of it to the bottom. Open it up and tell me from the floor of the microwave to the ceiling, because some microwaves won't take quart containers, only pipes.
Oh, sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you've got to pay attention to all of that.
And I want to back up just a little bit, because a lot of our audience is the scheduler dispatcher, and we also do have the flight attendants and those potential flight attendants. But I think you hit on a really good point too. Everybody's busy already. And so the least amount of trouble, I guess, or work that you can provide to us is the easiest. Because I've seen it hands down where the person who asks too many questions over and over again is not the person who's called back. How do you make everybody else's job easier? And if you're able to do that, you're definitely called back.
Well, by keeping, I tell them to have a binder with each flight department's name, okay? And then have every single detail about every passenger, the main users of the airplane, where things are on the plane, What's not on the plane that you need? Maybe there's no ice cream scoop on the plane and you need that. So you need to have a to-go kit with you and bring that with you. You don't want to keep bugging the scheduler and dispatchers. You've got enough on your mind. So the flight attendant needs to have detailed records of everything and make your job easier, because I'm telling you, I've got 3 or 4 pages just on what you do for us and for the flight department, and that you want to get called back. So keep detailed notes. So you need to know how to talk to the schedulers, the dispatchers, the mechanics, the aviation manager, the director, and you need everybody's phone numbers as well. Like what if you just did a 16-hour day and now you landed and you're cleaning the plane and you've thrown everything out and you're on the New Jersey Turnpike and all of a sudden you realize, oh my God, I left my cell phone on the airplane. Or not my cell phone. That's not a good example, because I would have to turn around and go back. But
Sure.
what if you forgot to dump the coffee? Or what if you left something in the oven by accident? The minute the plane arrives, you and I both know a mechanic is there to meet the plane immediately for if there's any squawks, any malfunctions for the aircraft. So I'll call immediately. I have the mechanics' names and numbers, and I'll call John. I'm so mortified. I forgot to dump the coffee. He'll go, no problem, Susan, I've got you. And he'll dump it for me. Yeah. So, you need to be able to communicate with everybody. And then international, did you want to say something? I'm sorry.
Oh, I just saying that. Very good point.
And then international, how do you get an airplane ready for a major international trip, remote trip planning, safe, global catering, procurement? You might be in the middle of Africa or India for 2 weeks. You've got to have tons of dry ice in the baggage compartment in 3 or 4 coolers and go out to the airplane every 2 or 3 days with the pilots, open the forward door and the baggage door, ventilate it because of the smoke that comes from the dry ice. It's very toxic. And have your handling company, your handler, meet you with dry ice from the airline of that country to replenish the dry ice. But you've got to ventilate the airplane. You've got to have everything planned in advance, because you're not going to get catering in the middle of India. And I teach all that. Emerging market, country destinations, and then augmented crew changes, which we just talked about. The front end and the back end flight attendants for planes that, don't have the capacity to go. I mean, some of these airplanes now, they're so amazing. The 650, some of the Bombardier equipment, can go from Teterboro to Asia without stopping. And then international customs, making sure that you are completely honoring anything about coming into another country, spraying the plane down. Some of these countries are very concerned about bringing in bugs or something. If you even going into Hawaii, sugarcane and pineapple is their main source of income in a way. You've got to spray the plane down. So I give them all the regulations going in and out of certain countries.
Nice.
And then crew fatigue management, how to take care of your body when you're on the road. And it's definitely a 50-hour training. There's so much to this.
And so this right now you have is running across 4 days or 5 days?
Well, now it's a 5-day training. And what I tell them is that all you have to do is get up, get out of bed, go to the bathroom, get fixed up, go to the kitchen, eat breakfast, and then go to your computer.
All right. Cool.
You don't have to spend money on traveling. You don't have to spend money on food, on hotel. It's right there in your house, and people are loving it like this.
I love it too. I'm all into remote stuff because I have kids at home, and I'm sure there's other people there as well. And I just don't have 3-4 days to go away for a training. Just don't have the time. I would probably not do the training. So I love that it's remote. Okay, so when is your next one?
My next training is October 19th, Thursday, the 19th of October until Monday, the 23rd of October. Okay. And again, it's a 5-day training, and I ship a 15-pound box to each student that has my 8-pound manual and a lot of handouts. they're getting a lot. That manual, I just can't. They call it the Bible. My students call their manual the Bible.
It sounds great. So if we wanted to sign up, anybody who's listening wants to sign up, where would we find it?
Well, you can go to my website, which is www.corporateflightattendanttraining.com. And if you fill out the form for information, I'll get that. And then I will call you and then we'll talk about it.
Perfect. Sounds good.
And also, if I may say the price of the training.
Sure. You go right ahead. Mm-hmm.
Because of the economy, I have dropped my training in the last 2 years from it was $4,400 for 4 days. Now it's a 5-day training, but people, everybody is having money issues right now.
Yeah.
So I dropped it from 44 to 42 to 39. So it's 3,900 now.
That's wonderful. What a great discount.
Yeah, because I want to help people. I want people to have the career and the life I've had. I have had the most amazing career. I have flown some of the coolest people on earth. And, and here's another thing too. This is so important. It's so weird that I can see you and you can't see me. But, one of the most amazing things is that we never discuss who we fly.
Oh, good point. I'm glad you're touching on this. Yes, tell us about that.
Well, it's anonymity. These people are chartering or, you never discuss, I used to, when I flew for American Standard, I used to shred everything. The plane wasn't big enough for a shredder. And Fred, my CEO, Mr. Poses, would say, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm shredding everything because I don't know, somebody paid somebody to steal our things." It was a company. What if somebody from a competitive company paid somebody? So, you never discuss anything, shred everything. Maybe after a trip, you can say, "Oh my God, I flew Senator Dole again." That's it. But you never discuss anything that went on the plane or what you heard.
I agree. I think that goes not only for the flight attendant, it's also the pilot, it's also dispatch. This industry needs to keep that data private. And I think that people will find that if you tend not to keep that private, you will not be asked back.
Exactly. I mean, and there are some flight attendants that love to talk about who they flew. I mean, I have a couple favorites, but we just don't discuss it.
No, you really don't. And I think that brings us to kind of a conversation we were talking about before we started the podcast. And that was, talk to us a little bit more about the relationship between the passengers that you're serving and yourself. We talked about it being, tell us about what you think about it.
Well, the way I look at it is if you're flying full time for people or if you're flying contract, I tell my students you're a paid guest on that aircraft. You're there to secure the cabin, make sure your emergency equipment's intact, make sure you have all your catering, that you do your thing and go away. You always have your ears open and it's like you're multitasking and then you're in one part of the airplane away from them, but you're still paying attention because you have to. You're 46,000 feet up there. You got to be paying attention, but you're not one of them. If you were, you wouldn't be working the trip. You'd be in a seat.
Right.
You're a paid guest. And if they ask you, like right now, politics is so crazy. So if they say, "Oh, well, what do you think about the election?" or "What do you think about this?" My answer is, I have an opinion, but I don't like to discuss politics when I'm working.
Yep. Very good stance.
You don't discuss politics and you don't discuss religion. And it's very important. I can't stress this enough. For instance, if you were flying an Indian gentleman and, Indian people from India, they don't eat meat.
Yep.
Okay. So it's not like you wouldn't give this gentleman a filet mignon. You don't give anybody a filet mignon. How rude to have the CEO sitting there eating a steak in front of a man who honors the cow.
Yep.
Right. So you have to be so cognizant of all of this in order to be respectful and be called back.
Yep. Such good points. So Susan, what if somebody's listening to this podcast and like, heck, that her life sounds pretty awesome. I want to try it too. How do they get started? What do they do?
Take my training.
All right. So take the training.
And I want to give my email address as well.
You bet. Yeah, go for it. I'll pop it in the details as well. So for anybody listening, you can hear it now, but I'll also put it in the notes.
Okay. S Sierra, C Charlie, F Foxtrot, F Foxtrot, A Alpha, and then the word training, TRAINING, don't laugh, at AOL.com. When I started my business, I started it with AOL. Everything is printed with AOL. I just didn't have the energy to start changing it to have what people think is a normal.
If AOL works, go right ahead. I bet it's a pretty good conversation starter.
Yeah, it is. People just laugh at me, but I think I don't care.
Yeah,
Laugh at my comedy when I'm doing stand-up in a club, but don't laugh at me because I have AOL.
All right. Noted. Hey, Susan, is there any videos of you doing stand-up comedy? Can we search you up? No. Darn. That would be cool.
No, because I wouldn't want the CEO of a major corporation to hear my comedy.
Hey, okay. That brings me to another point. And we were going to talk about branding.
Right.
I think that's a good point. So whatever you put out there, of course, on social media, anybody can find. Whether it's legal to or not, I don't know all that piece of it. But if you put stuff online, somebody can look at it at some point. Can you tell us some more about branding and how important some of these, how people view you is?
Yes, absolutely. What I can say about branding, number one, is I had a lot of pilots will call me and say, Susan, who have you trained? Who's been to FACS or flight safety training? Who do you recommend who speaks Spanish, who speaks Arabic, who speaks French, whatever, who do you recommend? And so I was trying to find somebody for a certain corporate culture that they were looking for. And I was in shock over some of the pictures that I saw on Facebook of girls with tattoos all over them. And, you can't have tattoos showing and weird piercings. And, you've got to be appropriate. You can't be making out with your boyfriend in a picture. It's for business. Or be in a bikini. You've got to have appropriate pictures. That's number one. Number two, I had a student ask me about branding. Like, how do I brand myself? What is my brand? And I said, let me think about that. And so what I came up with was that your brand is how you left the aircraft, if it was completely cleaned, coiffed, restocked, and how the passengers surmised you.
Mm-hmm.
The way they perceived you and the way you left the plane and their impression of you, that's your brand. That's what will get you called back.
Yep. Great advice. And then I think that also goes through into any position in aviation, especially business aviation. You have dispatchers and schedulers as well, even the pilots as well. You really have to watch what you're putting out there. Additionally, absolutely zero pictures of the aircraft and the tail numbers.
Oh my goodness. Good point, Lindsay. I won't say who the company is, but there was a contract flight attendant that had her pictures all over the internet with the tail number, and then in the interior of the aircraft with their name of the company logo thing. This is a quiet industry. It's like peeling an onion to get information. That's why the NBAA online, I tell everybody, join the NBAA, call and ask to speak to Margot. And as a new contract flight attendant, they give you a really good discount. But, their online marketing for you to find flight departments in your area with aircraft. I teach them which aircraft would use a flight attendant regarding the size of the aircraft, like that. So, it's really, if you just go to emergency training, you're going to have a really hard time because you can evacuate a plane, thank God, but you do not know how to work a trip. You don't know how to market yourself. You don't know how to prepare for a major international trip. You've got to be flexible. You've got to be creative. You have to have really good personal accountability skills. You have to have integrity.
Yeah.
No ego. The passengers have the ego. The pilots have the ego. You have to be able to take directions. And as we discuss confidentiality and anonymity, you've got to be professional all the time. You have to be able to compartmentalize. Got to love food. You have to multitask.
Yep.
You have to have impeccable time management skills, and you have to be open-minded, and you have to be a foodie.
That's true.
Because this is what a trip could look like. Lindsay, are you available to work a trip to Madrid next Thursday? You have 6 passengers. You're leaving at 1800, which is 6 p.m. And they want a 6-course hot meal service. One person's allergic to peanuts, one's kosher, and one's allergic to mango.
Oh,
and they want a 6-course hot meal service, and they want a tapas breakfast before landing.
Oh my goodness. That's a lot of prep work.
Yeah, well, that's why we have amazing aviation caterers. And when I do my training, I'm blessed to have this really great caterer, John Iacofano.
Oh, I recognize that name. Mm-hmm.
Iacofano Caterers. He's got maybe 6 catering kitchens around the country. And he comes on my training for about an hour and discusses communication skills on top of everything that I've taught. And then one of my very best buddies is Jim Kelly. He's a Pfizer pilot. And Jim comes on and talks for an hour. I used to do a lot of contract work for Pfizer, and he comes on and talks to them about CRM, crew resource management, communication skills between the front and the back. So I have guest speakers come on.
Great. That's so good. Oh, I'm gonna highlight both those things in the notes on the bottom of the podcast, though, for anybody who's listening there as well.
Okay. I'm passionate about this. I love teaching this.
Sounds like it. I mean, I'm excited to do it. I'm not good at that type of work, but you're making me excited, and I feel like maybe I want to go take the training just for fun, even though I may not ever fly, but it sounds like a great training. You also do this training for like a transition, if I'm not mistaken. I have been seeing commercial flight attendants coming away from the commercial side, going into the business aviation side, but they're kind of lost because it's really a whole different ball game.
It's completely different. And when commercial flight attendants call me, this is when I really interview people. You know, if they're not the right fit, I'll tell them this is not the fit for you. I recommend you apply to the airlines. But if it's a commercial flight attendant that's been flying 10, 15 years, and he or she says, well, I do international trips. I go, I get that. And what you do is not easy dealing with passengers, especially now. People are so crazy on the airlines. But, you know, you show up and you count your meals that are in a cart, and you count your peanuts or pretzels, whatever, and your minis, whatever. And, you know, you push your cart, you know, and then you go home. You maybe have 3 meal services, but you didn't order anything. You didn't, you know, I'm not in any way diminishing what you do, because I was you many years ago, but this is not the same thing. And some commercial flight attendants have a hard time transitioning over, and others just pick it up immediately like I did.
Sure. Yep. It's the niche for some people and maybe not for others. For sure.
Exactly.
Well, Susan, it has been so interesting talking to you, and what a ton of information. And I think you'll probably inspire people to be taking your class and to get into the business side of flight attendant work. There, one thing that you might want to leave us with, some suggestions of, I don't know, what it's like to be in this industry.
It's an amazing industry. I mean, the equipment, oh my God, being on an $80 million jet. Are you kidding? I mean, and they are so magnificent. And another thing that you can do, I've designed interiors. I've done that. You can make $1,000 a day helping to design an interior. And then there's also, somebody buys a brand new airplane and it needs to be stopped and provisioned. It was delivered with a roll of toilet paper, and that's it.
Right. So the glassware and the pillows.
They'll give you a credit card and they'll say, go shopping. And then you have to measure every drawer, every compartment. You've got to, you know, it's intense, but it's so much fun to go shopping for an airplane. I love doing that. That is so much fun. But you've got I have a 9-page passenger profile form with every single detail that I tell them. When you get a full-time flying position, if you're the lead flight attendant, you're going to give this to the pilots, you're going to give it to the CEO and all the users of the airplane, everything from the floss that they like to the wine that they like. Have office supplies on the airplane. You know, Do they like soft pillows, hard pillows? Are they allergic to wool, cashmere, everything? I mean, you've got to know everything. And if they have pets, what kind of pets, how big are the pets, any special pet food? I'll fly any pet except a snake. I will not fly on an airplane.
Has anybody asked you to fly a snake? That would seem like a strange one, but
no. But
hey, what's the strangest animal that you have flown with?
No strange animals.
Okay.
I had one of my favorite best trips of all was a couple that had, this was so much fun. They had left their golden retrievers. They had 2 golden retrievers and they left them home and they had them in a doggy camp, whatever. And they were missing their dog so much. So they got a citation 10. It was either a 10 or a 3. I don't remember, and they hired me to be with their dogs.
Oh, that is cool. That's awesome.
So it was just me and 2 golden retrievers. They didn't need hot towels. They weren't saying, "Where's the Sunday New York Times?"
That's so cool.
Yeah.
What fun trips. What fun.
Yeah, I've had an amazing career and I want that for everybody. It's the greatest job on earth. It's just amazing.
So cool. Well, your passion definitely comes through in how you speak, and you already gave us your email address. So definitely anybody who wants to ask questions of Susan, check her out via email. Otherwise, find her website online. You can also find her on LinkedIn. I know I find you on LinkedIn there, Susan.
And I have space. I have some space left in that October training.
Great. So by the time people are listening to this, the training is going to be about 2 weeks or a week and a half after this that gets posted. So definitely go online, sign up for it. Sounds like a wonderful training. Maybe I'll go.
But I have to ship that box.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, you don't want to be behind on that. That makes sense. Cool, Susan. Well, thank you again for your time. This has really been wonderful. I appreciate it. And I hope to have you back again on another podcast. I think this conversation, we could just go into it more.
Okay. I would love that. It was delightful to meet you, Lindsay. And I hope that next time the camera will.
There we go. We can do a live version. Yes. Where we can maybe post the video on there too.
Okay. But I really enjoyed this. I love empowering people and I love people that want to do this work, to do it the right way. You can't just get emergency training. You really need to know the job and how to get one.
Yep. I really think that you made a case for that. And I agree. I think, and that's what keeps you in business aviation. Otherwise you won't last long.
Yep. Exactly.
Excellent. Well, I look forward to talking with you again, Susan, soon.
Thank you, Lindsay. Be safe.
Thank you.
And Brad, you be safe too. I know you're there somewhere in cyberspace.
Thank you for listening. Please stay tuned for more episodes and check out our website for up-and-coming podcasts. This has been a production of the Business Aviation Collective, sponsored by LD Aviation.